How far would you go to make an impact in the world? The 10 incredible entrepreneurs will visit our campus to tell their stories and share the steps they took to be catalysts for change. The Entrepreneur Leadership Series, the most valuable one-credit class you will ever take.
Andrew was born and raised in New York City and is the son of two proud USU graduates. He attended the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis for 2 years, then finished his undergraduate degree in philosophy in 2010 at Cornell University. Andrew launched his first startup, Preplay, a sports app that allowed fans to make live, real-time predictions about what would happen next in pro sports games. It quickly caught the eye of Major League Baseball, and the league made an investment that took the company out of obscurity. After growing and ultimately selling the business, Andrew worked as a turnaround executive for NFL team owner Stephen Ross. In 2019, Andrew returned to entrepreneurship by launching Chassie, which designs, makes, and sells artistic furniture out of an 8,000 square foot facility in the Bronx. As the world of work evolves, Chassie focuses on home and office desks that meet the new needs of a flexible workforce. After just 2 years, Chassie has designed and built its unique style of furniture for hundreds of consumers and companies from Adobe to Warby Parker and Google. Let's give it up for Andrew.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Okay. Hello? How about now? Is that okay? It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my experience as an entrepreneur. My company is called Chassie, and we're going to get to that. We make really, really wacky furniture. If you check us out at chassie.com, we will have failed if it's not the weirdest furniture that you've ever seen. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about, I'm going to tell you a lot about that later, but I want to tell you a little bit about me first. Although I'm not a graduate of Utah State, like he said, I'm the son of two Utah State grads, proud Aggies. I'm having a little trouble with the sound here. Maybe I'll switch to that handheld microphone. Maybe I'll switch to that. Is that better? Okay, much better. Great. So my upbringing was in Manhattan. My parents left Cache Valley in 1973, 1974 for graduate school in New York and never left. And they raised my brother, my sister, and I at first in kind of a small apartment in this area of New York City called Museum Mile. Hands if you've been to New York City and checked out the Metropolitan Museum or the kind of the museum area, so a lot of you. So I lived right there. There's the Guggenheim Museum, which is that one that looks like a spaceship, basically. It's a big circle that spirals up and really unusual looking. There's the Metropolitan, and then there's a couple of other small ones. And I grew up right there, and before we moved, our apartment was pretty small, and I slept on the pull-out couch. So when my family was done watching TV, they'd pull out the couch and I'd get in there. And two big benefits of that for me were that one, I had a TV in my room, even though I was really little. If I put the sound low enough, they couldn't hear me watching. And the other big benefit for me, culturally, was that across the street, right out my window, was the Guggenheim Museum. And I had a little telescope. And they'd have these big openings, these big art galas. All the fabulous people of New York City would come, and they'd walk in, and they'd check out whatever the latest works were. And they'd have these spotlights. And I knew it was one of those nights because these spotlights would be going all over the sky, kind of like at a movie premiere or something. And they would shine into my bedroom, and I would know that that was kind of a special night. And I could look through my telescope, through the window, into the Guggenheim with all these fancy people and these beautiful new works of art. And for me tonight, I want to tell you, I didn't have any real formal business training. A lot of the lessons that I learned along the way are from small experiences and stories like the one I just said, where I got a little appreciation for art that I wouldn't have otherwise had if I had the other bedroom in the back where the window didn't face the museum. Any kind of nuggets of wisdom or learning that I've gotten, they come really informally because my degree was in philosophy and math and not necessarily no formal training in business. So I hope to share a few stories with you tonight, how I directly or indirectly learned something. And sometimes it's something that happened years or even a decade ago that just sort of comes back, and all of a sudden you remember it and you realize this is exactly the thing I needed to know and the lesson that I need to draw upon to continue building my business. So I had that New York City upbringing, and then I would spend my summers in Logan. My uncle lived in Providence and had a big house, and I could stay there. I would go to Hiram Dam and literally ask strangers for water ski rides. I was so obsessed with water skiing. I thought that was so cool that people out here did that. It was my dream one day to water ski behind a pickup truck in a ditch, but nobody would ever let me do that. I would come, my grandfather he actually was the mayor of Logan like a long time ago, even before my memory. And he had all these construction projects he would do. He'd restore old buildings in Logan, and I'd work for him a little bit and come to the construction site. I'd eat a lot of Aggie ice cream. And during these summers, I got tours of the construction sites. I did a little bit of work, and then I would mainly just sort of be his shop hand or assistant in his carpentry shop. He had one in his basement and then one in a barn. I would just hold the glue. I would just watch. I didn't really do much of anything. He spent a little time with me coaching and teaching, and I would help with these fine woodworking pieces that he did. And through that, I came to understand that my great-grandfather was actually a shop teacher and a master carpenter, and his tools are handmade by him and are this family heirloom that continues on today. I didn't think about any of that for 20 years. Never even occurred to me, it wasn't something that was going on in my mind. Even as I was doing hobbyist kind of furniture, I didn't draw upon those experiences directly. They were just little things that were in the back of my mind that I knew I had some little history in that, and also were telling me a little bit like, hey, if you did want to try this as a career or as a business, you probably could. My educational path took me from high school in New York City to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, which was an absolutely brutal experience. I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a movie about it. It was, we watched the movie when I was there. It was called Annapolis. And we were laughing as students at the Naval Academy watching this movie, because usually Hollywood movies will dramatize something and make it seem way worse than it really was. And we were like, this isn't even getting close to the actual experience of being at the Naval Academy, being shouted at and push-ups and all the humiliations that go on with being there. To give you a sense of the contrast, I was a real hustler in high school. I got into the Naval Academy in December, and my school was an all-boys school, a private school, and we had a headmaster, not a principal. We had a headmaster, and you were able to book an appointment with him, and I went in there in a suit and tie, and I said, I don't think that I should have to take any more classes for the rest of high school. And he gave me a blank stare, and he said, at some point you're going to explain yourself, right? And I said, yeah, I'm going to explain myself. I'm going to this military thing, and it's going to be really hard, and I just need to relax. And he said, what do you mean relax? And I said, I think it would be better if I just went up to the art room every day and made pots. I had taken a ceramics class, a half-credit class in high school. I think it would be better if I just made ceramics on the wheel, and I'll even build the tables and pedestals, and I'll do a little art show at the end of the year. But I'd really rather not take any math, physics, chemistry, history, English. Forget all the subjects. I'm just going to do these pots. And to my credit, I don't think to his, to my credit, he said okay. So I spent the whole spring semester of my senior year not making any pots at all. I had totally pulled the wool over them. I just kind of did whatever I wanted. It came to be kind of March and April, and they're asking for a progress report. The show is supposed to be in May before graduation, but they're like, hey, what's going on with this art show? And I said, I don't want you to see it. It's going to be really special. It'll ruin the surprise if I let you see this thing. It's really, really special. And he looked at me and he said, I don't think you've made a single thing. And I said, I have. I was just lying to him. I was completely lying to him. I said, I certainly have. And he said, show me. So we walked up to the art room together, and clearly there was nothing there. About halfway up there, I said, you know what, you got me. I haven't made anything yet, but I'm going to. And he said, you need to be punished very severely over this thing. He just looked at me, he goes like, what should we do with you? What am I gonna do with you? You've taken no classes and you've made no ceramics. What are we gonna do with you? And thinking on my feet, I said, well, I'm gonna make the pots, I promise. I'll nights and weekends, I'll do all that. And he said, it's not just that. You've been doing nothing the whole semester. And I said, okay, what if I do this? I'll go up on the stage at assembly and I'll make a pot live in front of the whole school. And if the bigger the pot that you make, the harder it is. And I said, if I can make a pot that's 18 inches high, that's like really, really big. It was bigger than any I had made before. I said, if I can make one that's like 18 inches or maybe 2 feet high, will you just leave me alone? Will you just let me pass high school so I can go on with my life? And he said, okay. So I schedule this thing, and I go out, I set it up. I have this big stage. There's about 250 kids in the class. It's very similar to this, actually, for 250 kids in high school. And my hands are shaking. I get up there, and I had a microphone, and I was supposed to live demonstrate the throwing of a pot on the wheel while explaining what I was doing, while my hands are shaking. And I don't know if anybody's ever been in a ceramic studio, but making a pot makes some really disgusting sounds. Just kind of like gross, slurping, wet sounds that are really, really funny to a group of 250 16, 17, 18-year-old boys. So they're laughing hysterically at me as I'm sitting there covered in clay making this pot, and it goes up, and I see my future rising from the ceramics wheel. Every inch I get up, every inch it goes higher, I'm this much closer to graduating from high school. And I made it. So I totally made it. Hey, thanks for that. I appreciate that. And up until that moment in my life, I had had a pretty serious fear of public speaking and public demonstration. Yet again, I didn't solve my problem with public speaking and public demonstration by going to a class about that. It was this gauntlet set up by me, a really, really tough situation I had to kind of get myself out of. But a situation that needed to be solved nonetheless that I learned from practical experience. So from there to the Naval Academy, I'm not even going to talk about that because I really didn't like it. We're going to go to my time as a philosophy student at Cornell. I spent 2 years there. Those 2 years, I came to understand this thing about getting your degree in philosophy, which is that people who are established in their careers or don't really know what it is, they kind of make fun of you a little bit. Raise your hand if you've taken a philosophy class. I don't know if you've had this experience with your philosophy class, but when people talk about it who don't know much about it, they say, oh, that's just, when you don't really ever learn you don't really learn anything from it. You learn phrases like, it's all relative. Or maybe if you've taken an advanced course, we're all just part of a computer simulation. Nothing's real anyway, so none of it all matters. And people have these ideas about a philosophy course of study, that it's not rigorous and you don't really learn anything firm. But my experience was totally the opposite. So what I felt like I learned as a philosophy student was to examine questions really, really deeply, to get really, really into the root of a problem, the root of a question. And as I pondered my career and what I'm doing right now, especially to prepare my remarks today, it became clear to me that I've been involved with, I've started, and I've really admired businesses that they have to make money, they have to do all this really important stuff to keep the lights on. They have to make a better product, they have to treat their people well. But underlying the whole thing is a very big and important idea. A very big, important idea. So, my company's called Chassie. I already did the little bit about me part. And I want to talk to you about this chair. I didn't make this chair. Can anybody shout out what this chair is? This is a very, very famous chair, and I'm really disappointed in all of you right now. Okay. This is called the Aeron chair. A very good friend of mine who's become a mentor designed and created this chair. And when I say that, for me, great businesses, and hopefully the businesses that I'm building, are based on a fundamental idea, the challenge with furniture or making a physical product is usually we express our idea with words. But a product like this is about expressing an idea in a physical shape or physical form. When I wrapped my head around that concept and started to consider it, I got really excited about product design. And my friend Don, who's behind this chair, this is the best-selling chair, this is the best-selling piece of furniture in the history of the world. They designed it 30 years ago. They've never changed the design once. It sells roughly $500 million a year, and they don't have to change anything. It is extremely comfortable. It's extremely functional. It saves literally over the course of its life, tens of millions of people's backs are better because of this chair, and it's created huge fortunes. Before this chair was launched, it's got the mesh back. That's the main thing that's really different about it. Before this, nobody had ever put mesh as the back of a chair. And this mesh back and this entire design was based on some really big ideas. I'm going to tell you about the idea a little in a second, but when they went to go put this chair out, they do a market survey and they bring in some testers. And this product tested lower than any product release they'd ever been working on before at the company Herman Miller, where it comes from. It got a 30 out of 100. Everybody said it was weird. It wasn't that comfortable. They didn't feel like it would shape to their body over time, all the things that people thought they knew or liked about chairs. This chair, of course, went on to win every award. It's actually displayed in the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, and it's made over $20 billion in sales since it was created. And it kind of just for us looks like a normal chair. But back then, totally revolutionary idea. I asked Don what the idea of this product was, and the idea underlying this, the big idea, is democracy. I was like, what are you talking about? Democracy, it's a chair. It's where your rear end goes. And he said, no, think about this. You're an office worker in the 1970s, and there are 3 kinds of chairs. The executive has a comfy, cushy, tall back chair. Your mid-level managers have a so-so chair that goes up to their shoulders. And then there was something terrible called the secretary's chair. The secretary chair only went up to about here. It was this class distinction at work, what kind of chair you had, and the less you got paid, and supposedly the less important work you did in the organization, the worse the chair you got. Even though from what I could gather, a secretary might spend the most time in a chair of anybody. Why shouldn't they have the most comfortable one? So the underlying idea of this design is they brought it to a great product designer, and they said they wanted to do a design that would encapsulate and achieve democracy in the workplace. A big, fundamental concept that you had to give a physical shape to. I'm not going to say anything more about that. It's just, for me, a big lightning bolt moment hearing from my friend that this chair is democracy, and I thought that was really weird. But it's something I try to carry with me as I started my businesses. As we get into it a little bit, I'm going to tell you about my first chapter. This is the headquarters of Pre-Play Sports. In 2010, fresh off of a philosophy degree, I decided I would make an app. The app did this very simple thing. You're watching a baseball game, a real one on TV, and you guess what's going to happen next. It could be a single, double, triple, home run. You had all kinds of guesses about all the scenarios, and what was new and different about this game was that you were predicting every single little thing. Some people, when I pitched them the idea and got investors, they said, that's a lot. That's too much. But what we found when we did this business was that you could never give people enough. The kind of customer, the kind of fan who wanted to do this and engage with it, they wanted to do absolutely every single thing. And they were mad that we didn't have a pitch by pitch as opposed to just an at-bat by at-bat. They wanted to guess whether it was going to be a fastball or a slider, inside or outside. They wanted to guess every single thing. We did this business, this app concept for hockey, for baseball, for NFL football, for US Open tennis. We grew it pretty big and pretty fast. We raised a lot of venture capital. I had a team of about 20 working out of 2 offices, and we really, really went for it. Because I was this philosophy nerd, and because I had this desire that the things I was involved with had a big underlying idea, I would constantly remind myself and the team that the big idea of this business wasn't to be fun, whatever that means. Anybody play video games? I'm going to tell you something true about video games. They're not fun. They're not fun at all. They're really challenging. They push you. As soon as you get to the edge of your ability, they push you a little further. You don't watch somebody who's playing video games and they have some big stupid grin on their face. They're not having fun in the normal way. They're actually challenged. And so this game was really challenging because the big idea behind it was that the most interesting question in the world is what's going to happen next. I don't care if you're talking about politics or weather or what's going to happen in your city, what's going to happen in the next big game. The most interesting, fundamental, deep question that gets people excited, gets people engaged, gets people talking, and maybe even using my dinky little app here was what's going to happen next. So that business was animated by a big fundamental idea. Fast forward to 2014, after 4 years of building and running this business out of our grungy New York graffitied studio with a bunch of hackers, we were able to sell this business to a multi-billionaire sports team owner who had a lot of different technology businesses. It was a big outcome and a big exciting moment for me in my career. And as soon as I got there, I realized that I had been tricked very, very badly. I got there and I realized he didn't actually have a huge amount of interest in this app that we had made. He didn't have a huge amount of interest in the big underlying idea behind what I had done. He was really there to recruit me to help him mop up a really, really messy business. So I spent the next 5 years of my career as what's sometimes called a turnaround artist. There was no art about it, but here's a picture of me in the NASCAR pit lanes. He had built and invested in a business called FanVision, and FanVision was a gizmo. It was this thing that you brought to sports games. It could be football or any of the major sports leagues, but it was really mostly racing where fans liked it. And you could hear what was going on inside of the race car. You could see what was going on in the race from the vantage point of the race car driver, and super fans loved this thing. I spent 5 years of my life. We had about 100 employees working on this business. Really, really challenging business. Had a bunch of legacy costs and issues. It was living in the world of iPhone where everybody I would talk to, every new potential customer or investor or business partner would say, why don't you just make an app for that? And I had to give this long, boring explanation, it's very technical, about why an app couldn't do what we would do. Why it couldn't give you a low latency video feed, and why it couldn't get you right in the action and give you 30 channels of audio, but this gizmo that we had created could actually do that. So I spent 5 years on that business, and one problem I had with it the whole time was that there was no big idea. It wasn't the thing that I had created. I didn't feel a deep and abiding passion for the business, and for me to feel passionate about something, it's not like I had to make it in the first place. I feel passionate about lots of things that I didn't create. But this one in particular, I thought, as a money-making venture. And I'm all about making money in my ventures, but I would rather that they would have some underlying big idea behind them. So I worked on this business, worked really hard for 5 years, built it up to a point where we were the #1 in our category. We were selling and renting these devices in 21 countries for all 21 Formula One Grand Prix. I got to go to every race in the world. That was pretty cool. I got to spend a lot of time in the NASCAR pit lanes, pitching crew chiefs and drivers about why they should use our system, and selling these to fans and everything as well. And after 5 years, NASCAR, the racing body, knocked on our door and decided they would like to have the company, and they gave us a number that was acceptable, and they bought the business and all the technology, and they still have it today. So that was FanVision. When FanVision was done, I had a little bit of time on my hands. I didn't have a job anymore. I had a little bit of money and the good graces and goodwill of a wealthy investor who would help me do what I wanted to do next. but I really knew that I wanted to go back to creating a business myself that I was driven by passion and that had a big idea behind it. So this is my life now. This is my bike ride to work. This is, on the left side, this is my big machine where I make the furniture. And here's a couple of our pieces. My company is called Chassie. We make desks and tables. I'm going to show you, we had an investor deck. We don't really have investors anymore, and we're sort of on our own now and making it pretty well. But this is one of our creations. This is the Nebula desk. These are some slides from the pitch deck that I put together when I asked my old boss if he would give me some money to help get this started. The animating idea or force behind it was that you're going to spend a quarter of your life at your desk. It's one of the most important things, most important places. And if you believe that what you're doing is valuable, that's actually your life's work. I would even say, like, whether you realize it or not, whether you know it or not, or want it or not, that's your life's work. That's where you're spending all this time. And I wanted to make a product myself. I really wanted to be the one making it, where you could do your life's work with greater creativity and passion, because the desk itself is more functional, it's more flexible, it's centered around you and your body and your unique aesthetic tastes. And we were going to create stuff that looks, like this, not your typical thing. We wanted to stand out, clearly. So this business, which I'm going to describe to you what it is today, wasn't what it is today when it started. We started this off more almost like an art fair. I worked backwards from this question that I've always tried to use in business. What compliment do you want to be paid about what you're doing? And if a customer buys your product, what compliment do you want them to get when somebody else sees it? If you're in the discount tire business, you'd hope that somebody who shops at your store, that somebody who finds out that they shopped at your discount tire business would say, wow, that's really smart, that's really thrifty. If you're making, one-off, super flashy sneakers, you'd probably want somebody to call your customer cool or hip. And for me, I worked backwards from the same question, and I thought, I want people to call a Chassie customer creative. I'd always felt in my life, whenever I told somebody that they were creative, they were just glowing and beaming from that compliment. It's a really meaningful compliment. And I would hope that every customer I have, whether they were using the desk to do graphic design or accounting or working on their startup deck or studying for their medical boards or whatever the thing they would do at this desk, I worked backwards from this compliment. I want people to say, wow, that's where you do creative work. That's interesting. That's different. And I wanted the designs to be pretty loud. It's really hard out there. It's hard to get people to take notice of you. So I made a list of things that nobody would ever say about the Chassie desk. It's boring. It doesn't come in the right size. It's just missing this one thing that the other guy's desk has that I just wish it had. The one I like is out of stock. It's too expensive for what it is. The tabletop is too high or low for me, for my body and my height. They'll never say, this old thing. It doesn't speak to me, and my wires and tech have no place to go. And this list became my North Star of how I would design the product and how I would design the business. I kept going back to this list and making sure that I designed a factory and a system and a way of doing things where we could always answer these questions in the way I hoped. So, February 26th, 2020 was the big day. I packed a cool art gallery in downtown New York full of 500 people and hosted a massive super spreader COVID event. This is everybody checking out the first collection of designs. We had 10 New York City artists create an original work of art, and then we had those printed onto the desktops. And we did this flashy thing too, where it was art, but it was also interactive because we coded all of them in a whiteboard marker safe additive. So you could enjoy all these desk works of art, whatever you want to call them, these pieces of furniture, but you could also doodle them. You could color them in. This one here is now in the headquarters of Adobe, and they've got 20 massive conference tables and a bunch of desks that have this design on it, and they use it as a massive coloring book. when they sit around and do their meetings and brainstorming sessions, they have this huge 10-foot long coloring book in front of them. This one's called Daydream by a good friend and artist named Stephanie Stillwell. So we commissioned these works. We threw a big party. All the right press wrote about us, New York Magazine and Architectural Digest, and all these people came to check out our party and this new kind of weird take on furniture. And I was like, oh man, we're off to the races here. And then I read the newspaper a couple days later, and this became my life. For 3 months, for the first month, I wasn't even allowed to go to my own shop and I was sick. And then for 6 months, I wasn't allowed to have any employees. I had to very sadly send them all home. But luckily, I had all the stuff that I needed to get the business started up. I had the machinery. I had a big CNC router in my studio in the Bronx. I had all these art prints. I had some inventory of this raw material. I had the know-how basically, plus maybe a little bit of YouTube would help me get to know where I could actually make all the stuff myself. And I had a label printing machine and boxes. I had everything physically there. I had a staff before who was supposed to do all that. But I said, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to try. I'm going to try to learn how to operate this big machine. I'm going to try to learn how to do all the edge finishing and cutting myself. And I was off to the races. And for me, all of a sudden, everybody needed a desk. So I was there for them. I first called all my friends and family and asked if they could. I was sort of doing it almost as an act of service. Hey, do you need a desk on short notice? I know you're working from home all of a sudden. There's no desks left on Amazon. Would you like one of mine? And a lot of them said yes, and they told their friends. And pretty soon we were into the Google employee discount program. So Google employees from all over the country, 50,000 of them, were able to check out our stuff, and if they liked it, they could get one. And the Google employees were really into these super wacky desk designs. They loved the fact that you could draw on them. They loved it was something different. They loved that there was this one guy in this one studio in the Bronx making it. That resonated with them as a branding message. And they liked that I was willing to work my tail off and offer shipping in 3 days. As soon as the order came in, I would run to the studio and make the piece. So we got really unlucky, and then we got really fortunate that there was so much demand. I want to talk to you a little bit about the place where I do my work. So this is from the outside. When I started touring spaces in the South Bronx area of New York, which is a very rough neighborhood in a lot of ways, it was very close to my apartment. My apartment is on the east side, same place, Museum Mile, really fun, good family-friendly neighborhood with tourists walking around all the time. But if you bike about 5 miles as the crow flies, you get to the South Bronx, which is a historically really rough place, but it's also a place that's zoned for manufacturing. And I had this idea that if we made our pieces, we were never going to compete on price. The thing that we make it's too unusual, it's too bizarre, it's too full of art and culture. We're not trying to race to the bottom and get that low price and that low cost. We're actually trying to make something kind of fine. And I wanted to keep that in New York. So I found a studio in the South Bronx in this building here, covered in graffiti, that would let me have, at that time, 4,000 square feet. They'd let me have my machinery up there, make as much dust and noise as I would like. But this is what it looked like on the inside. This picture doesn't really do it justice. It was completely, I don't know why, but there's no pigeons in this picture, but the place was completely filled with pigeons and everything that goes along with pigeons, including feathers and other stuff. So the pigeons had really taken over this shop, and it was very affordable. I knew one of the principles. I just wanted to keep my monthly expenses really, really low on this business. I had a feeling deep down that furniture wasn't the kind of business where you could always get some high-flying tech investor to give you $1 million to get started. You kind of had to do it on your own. And so for that, I wanted to keep my costs low. So I took this place. I had my father-in-law come over and rip up floorboards, which I then turned into my son's bed, because waste not, want not. And slowly, it became this really pleasant place to spend my time doing my life's work. These windows weren't there at first. Before these windows were there, they were cinder blocked up, and they were filled with rats and pigeon nests. So I tapped on the cinder block and I said, there's probably a nice view out of there, and figured out how to do windows. Pretty soon I was ready for my big machine to arrive. And this is not really a life lesson. It's just when you order an 8,000-pound machine, the guy just leaves it on the sidewalk for you. So you better have a plan. So this is the machine arrived from the factory that we were going to use to build our whole business. And the truck driver left it on the sidewalk and said, basically, have a nice life. And I said, okay, how are we going to get this upstairs? I thought he had the plan for how to get it upstairs. I was pretty naive. But we figured it out. And here I am on the day that we actually got it upstairs. And this is what the studio looks like today. It's this really bright, colorful, expressive place. It's wacky. It has tons of colors. It looks just like our desks. If the desk was a place, this is what it would be. And if this place became a desk, our product is what it would be. And I think you might know where I'm going with this a little bit, but if I was going to do this business my way, and if I was going to do this business in a way that felt authentic and creative and all the things that I aspired for it to be, I needed for the space where I worked to be an authentic representation of our brand. I wanted our brand to have a physical place. Not every business you start needs that or wants that. It's not always possible. But for me, because we were making a physical, tangible thing, I wanted to make my studio a statement of the brand. So I'm going to tell you a little bit with those pieces. I kind of got you up to our launch, and then I brought you back to when we were just getting the studio kind of set up and painted. This is where we started. High art concept, flashy photography, hip young artists creating original works. This is a wonderful artist named Ivy Tai who did this pattern called Forest for our desktops. Brightly colored, totally unusual. And then, like I said, big curveball with having to shut down the studio. And this isn't actually what people wanted or needed in that moment. Very quickly, we switched to this. Our walnut desktop, the one on the left side for you, and then some wacky art print ones from the original collection as well, but mounted on a standing desk frame. When we started the business, we thought we were making super high-priced kind of artistic objects that would sell for $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000. But very quickly, the world needed these and needed a lot of them in people's homes very, very quickly. So we quickly shifted to that. After that, this business, in just 2 years, I'm just talking about a span of 2 years, how quickly things have changed for us, it switched to this for us. We went from one-off $3,000 art print desks signed by a famous artist to $800 to $1,000 functional items like this, like a standing desk, to full-on library build-outs. We built everything you see from left to right with a beautiful, solid walnut desk that goes up and down in the middle, and priced these projects anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000, depending on what the client wants. We still do this, and we still do this, but we've added to our product line and our capability set so that we can be there for our customer and that our brand stands for creativity and productivity. No matter what you're doing, any kind of home office work at all, we basically have something for you, big or small. And the reason we were able to be this flexible from this to this to this is that we decided early on to own the manufacturing, to create a business where everything was in one physical place where I could get my hands on it, I could use the machine, I could learn all the craft that I didn't already know, I could master the crafts that I already did know, slowly train up staff to take over my making so I could do more business development. But in general, we had all the parts and pieces, all the raw material, and a space to do everything all in one place. That is by no means a piece of advice that you should do that with your own business, but I wanted to share it because it is the reason we were able, over a period of 3 years, to not so much pivot our business. We still do everything that we always did. We never walked away from any of our business lines, but to add to our business lines in a really challenging environment. We could get our hands on the equipment, and we could be there and actually make the stuff ourselves. So I want to talk to you. Oh, I forgot this one. This is like the favorite thing I've ever made. So this is the home office. I have a little bit of a funny story. It's a little bit off color. We were in a home making this piece, and it's for these two guys in their apartment. Older guys, they lived together, and they said, they saw how beautiful the desk I had made for them and this built-in was for them was, and they said, they went into the other room and they were kind of whispering, and they came back into the room and they said, do you think that you could make a king-size bed for two old queens? And I got a commission to do this first non-desk, non-productivity item. We do these things occasionally. They're a great statement of brand. They're a great way for us to express, hey, these people at Chassie can make anything. So we only take one of these on about every quarter, but it was a very special moment that they had seen the craftsmanship that we brought to the other pieces we had made for them and asked us to make something that was a little bit outside of our comfort zone. So we decided to say yes. I want to share a little bit, kind of sum up a few of the things that I learned along the way building and growing Chassie. The first one is that it's been really useful for me as a small business trying to get people to pay attention. It's really, really challenging. There's so many great businesses, there's so many great desk companies out there that we took a strong point of view. We didn't say we're going to take what's out there on the market, improve it by 5 or 10%, or add one feature, or drop the price by $10 and go out there. Nobody will care and nobody will notice. If you have a point of view, especially in a category like ours where people just need to crave it. There's this saying in furniture like, cost doesn't equal price. Don't just completely forget how much it costs you to make the thing. The amount that somebody is willing to pay for it is just based on how much they crave it. And they're only going to crave it in our category if you take a really strong point of view. If you say, my thing is going to be genuinely, authentically different. From the smallest screw, to the color choices, to the pattern on top, to the story of how it's made by this wacky little company in the Bronx. That point of view translates into everything, and it becomes sort of the essence of your brand. The second thing that's been really useful for me is to live the brand that I've created. I use the furniture at home. I share it with my friends and family. I'm always telling them to check out the newest thing that we've created. And also, the way I've created my workspace, both at home and in the studio, is a true expression of the brand. It helps me keep my business on my mind all the time in a healthy and positive way, and it helps me remember who we are. For instance, I'll go back. I have this walnut desk here on the left side. This is a real walnut desk. It's made of a tree. There's a way to make this desk where it's not made of a tree, and it's like 92% as good. Somebody who looks closely at it, who knows what they're doing, they can see that it's not the real thing. They can see it's not going to age as well, and they can see it's basically a phony baloney thing made to look like a tree. There's a place for that kind of furniture in the world, but it's not in my studio. And by having a brand and a studio that represents who we are and what we're about, it reminded me when the salesman came and tried to get me to switch to that. In the end, I just had to say, nah. I didn't really have a good reason for them. I just said, it's not us. It's not who we are. And by surrounding myself in the brand, I was able to stick to my guns because I'm sure you can tell that the fake one is cheaper. We probably would have made an extra $30 per desk. That adds up over thousands and thousands of desks that we hope to sell in the future. The third one, a lot of the business books that I've read and a lot of the advice and discussions that you tend to have about business, for me, they've always been centered around, should you pivot? Should you change what you're doing? If the market's not responding as much or as quickly as you'd hoped, should you just do something different? And the answer can oftentimes be yes. However, the more fundamental question is, could you? The could you pivot has to do with how you've set up the business in the first place. If you're solely reliant on a supply chain and you're all in on one product and you don't really control anything, you're just sort of clicking a mouse and pressing the reorder button on a product that's made somewhere else, you have a lot of advantages. Your business is really simple. It's easy to run. It might be more scalable than mine. However, it might be really, really difficult for you to pivot. You might be loaded up on inventory. You might not have an obvious way to do something else quickly. When we decided that we were going to start doing these standing desks after the pandemic started, we were up and doing it in 2 weeks. We didn't have to wait on anybody. And the resiliency and strength of our business and the ability to survive the pandemic had to do with the fact we set up the business, the manufacturing ability, the physical space, designing something that could kind of be made by one person. It was a really resilient business. So there'll be many opportunities in your career and when you start a business of your own where you'll be wondering constantly, should I just change in some way? But as you set up the business in the first place, really think about if you even could, if that would be even possible with what you're setting up. That was 3A, this is 3B. This is just a little saying I like, that I'd rather be a cockroach than a unicorn. Unicorn's the funny name they give to businesses that grow really fast and are on paper at least worth $1 billion or more. Unicorns aren't real. Cockroaches really are, and they survive almost anything. I think if anybody's seen that movie Independence Day, they have to drop a nuclear bomb on Los Angeles to kill the aliens, and it doesn't even work, but the cockroaches survive. The cockroaches survive because that's what they do. And so part of Chassie's ability to grow and to become a thriving business like it is in these recent months has been the fact that we were set up to survive with low costs, with a system that we could control and manage on a very small crew, while that's what the business called for. And then lastly, this is just a total oxymoron I wanted to share with you. Over the course of the business, there have been people who told me, don't get into furniture, it's a really hard business. Every business is really hard. There's no if there was an easy one, people would find out very quickly and just flock to that one, and then suddenly it wouldn't be so easy anymore because it would be full of competitors. So the advice to stay out of furniture, I had to have a completely closed mind to that. Once I had decided I was going to be in that category, I had to go all in and sort of forget even really trusted smart people who had told me to stay away from it. In other situations, I had to keep a really open mind, because when we made this switch from high art piece to standing desks, it was very tempting to not do that. It was very tempting to say, we made this bet, let's see how it pays. It's very tempting to say, this is what we are and we can't be anything else. We had an art show basically, and if I went out and sold an $800 standing desk, it looks like a kind of a funny switcheroo or a trick that we pulled or something. Didn't turn out to be right at all. People love the standing desk and they just wanted as many as they could get. So these moments, you have to decide what your fixed point is. And for me, it was making and creating furniture. And then within that band, maintaining a really open mind, taking advice, thinking about how you might pivot and change and evolve your concept. I'll mention one final thing before I open it up for questions. Each business has to be and should be really different from the other ones. My business, you can tell from my bike ride, you can tell from me laying on that machine like in that picture before, from the bright and colorful and unusual designs. It's incredibly personal for me. I'm really into it. I live the lifestyle that the brand represents. I go to this place every day that's full of color and full of the brand. I use the product, I love the product, and I'm genuinely okay with the scale that we're at. The scale being a business that I can totally see and understand and where I feel like I haven't skipped any steps. I know how to make it, I know how to market it, I know how to put it in the box, I know how to print the sticker on this stupid little sticker machine that's just for packing labels. I know how to do every little step that the business requires, and that has lent me a lot of comfort and stability in a really uncomfortable and unstable time. there will come a day where I have more people on the team than we have right now, where we're maybe outsourcing a few more of the jobs, where we're maybe having somebody else do those walnut tables that take me so long to do, that maybe we have a longer supply chain or a third-party fulfillment center warehouse out in California for those long treks that our desks make sometimes from New York. But by the time I get there, I'll fully understand each of the steps in our supply chain, making, marketing, and fulfillment. And that's been a really, really useful toolkit for me. In the previous businesses I was involved with, the name of the game was get big fast. Get as much money in the door as you can from investors, get as big as you can, and just do it as quickly as humanly possible. I've decided in this venture to do things a little bit differently. Furniture happens a little bit more slowly by its nature than tech does. But the fulfillment and the confidence that comes from really understanding your business and not outsourcing everything has been great for us. It's led to both financial success and a personal sense of, yeah, I get this. This is my thing. It's really mine. So with that, I would love to hear any questions or ideas you might have. In the red sweater?
Hi, I'm from Queens, and I love New York City, and I miss it every day. So I'm happy to see pictures from there. Is it possible to have a creative-based business somewhere without the population? Like, you don't have as many artists, you don't have as many people to support you and help you. And would you say that it's as likely to be successful somewhere more rural than something like New York?
So the question was, the first part of the question was, I love New York, which I really appreciate. I've got a little story about that. And the second part was, is it possible to have a sort of artistic or creative business outside of an urban center? Yeah. The short answer has to be yes, because you just grow out from where you are. In our case, although there were millions of people around New York City, the first sales that we made from it were just the friends and family. And then they tell their friends and family, and it grows from there. And it's not like there's any less of that in a rural versus urban versus suburban. And then as a very nitty-gritty point about recruiting artistic talent, this isn't like a big, broad answer. It's really easy. It depends. If you want to get really famous, well-known artists and stuff who are part of a scene, that's different. But if you're interested in the work itself, there is so much brilliant work by young, up-and-coming artists who will work on a 2 or 3 or 4% royalty for their work with no money up front. You can get the work. You can get the creative goods in anywhere. That's a kind of a sad feature of working in the arts, but a real fact that can benefit you if you have an idea for a creative business. And then on that, so you said I love New York or I love Queens. Our first artist recruit for Chassie, who made a table for us, was a guy who recently passed away. His name was Milton Glaser, and he was the creator of the I Heart New York logo. Maybe the most recognizable symbol like on earth. It's like Coca-Cola and I Heart New York and that Greek coffee cup, those ones. So we had a friend who knew his accountant, and I kind of wormed my way into the accountant and wormed my way into his office, and I asked him if he would like to be the first to do a table design for us, and he said yes, and he was 92, and he did the design for us, and it was literally the last work of art that he ever created was a Chassie desk. So I love New York too. That's the story.
So when you were starting like Free Play and Chassie, both scenarios, unless there was more behind the story, it doesn't seem like you were already an app designer or already a furniture creator. And sometimes when people come into businesses where they haven't been doing it for a while, like a common phrase like an imposter syndrome. Like, am I really capable of making an app that will help people predict all these sports plays or making desks, and just being able to say that, yes, I can figure that out. How was that experience for you, or overcoming that?
Thank you. The question was about facing imposter syndrome in fields like software or sports or technology where you don't have the core competency of being an app maker or a software engineer or something, and overcoming that. The answer is yes, that's a big part of it. I would say I would kind of go back to my undergraduate degree a lot, and although it wasn't in business, it was in sort of the business of reasoning your way through questions and first principles all the way to an answer that you believe is right and logical. And my confidence basically came from believing that I could do that or apply that set of skills on nearly anything. It turns out I was wrong. Like, it's not like everything that I tried at, we won at, or every idea ended up being right, but I think your question was a bit more about where does the confidence come from, or the ability to try. And the confidence for me came from having this background where I was like, yeah, you start with a little true fact, and you build on that fact with another one, and all of a sudden you've reasoned yourself to a business plan or an idea for how to change the product or something like that. And I always felt really, really comfortable that my logic and reasoning were sound, and that it was worth a try because of that. I never felt ill-equipped in that area. So take a philosophy class. That's the answer.
So you kind of talked a little bit about like people were just selling you because the furniture industry is really hard to get into. And I imagine you have people telling you like, nobody's going to want to buy a $3,000 desk. There's not a demand for it. And so what advice would you give to somebody who's kind of dealing with that in their own life, where like, you're trying to tell people your ideas and everybody's like, there's already like a demand for that, there's already like people filling that space, so it's not worth it.
Yeah, the book I love and the sort of framework for that question is called Blue Ocean Theory. Has anybody heard of that book or has studied here maybe? It's a framework for thinking about your product and your business idea in terms of, is there an actual and genuine point of difference between what's out there and what's and what you've got. And the metaphor of the book is that your competitors are these sharks, and sometimes people want to go mess around in shark-infested waters that are red with blood already. But you should go to the blue ocean. You should go to the part of the ocean where there are no sharks at all, because you're standing and setting yourself apart from all these people who are frantically competing over the last scraps of an industry. So for me, the answer to that is really being honest with yourself and your business partners about whether you're genuinely different, or are you a little different and you're acting like your little difference is actually way bigger than it really is. Is it just a little cheaper or a little shinier or a little, just those little differences that aren't actually that important.
I'm so sorry. It's not like a super deep question, but I'm just really curious. How did you get that equipment upstairs?
Okay, yeah. So I did have, the most challenging part was that the door to my studio is only 36 inches wide. And the machine is 8 feet long and really huge and weighs 8,000 pounds. So I knew in advance I was gonna have this problem, so I hired a company in California to literally cut the machine in half with a laser. And it's a huge piece of steel, and they take a laser beam and they just it's like in Star Wars or something, they just kind of cut it in half. So I knew that part, and I had this thing, I was ready to stay the night on the street. I was sort of wondering where my camping equipment was, but luckily one of the cool things about starting a business in New York is there's 24/7 everything. We're just really used to that. Our restaurants, our Metro Transit, everything is 24/7, and there is a 24/7 rigging company. So it's these 6 guys showed up about an hour later after I went through the phone book and called everybody, and they were there in an hour, and they had a teeny tiny crane, and they used that teeny tiny crane to lift it to another teeny tiny crane into the elevator, and then, on wheels through the door.
Thank you so much. Here's a little present from the School of Business. Thank you, guys.